Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino, that Gino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and today it is time to discuss Xcom, Enemy Unknown, the tactical strategy role-playing game that stars a unit of crack alien hunters fighting against fighting against aliens who have invaded Earth, and they do so by moving in grids and shooting from afar or up close. Depends on what kind of units you got. And to discuss XCOM Enemy Unknown, I am joined, as always, by Pete Busby.
Hey, what's going on? Excited to talk about a game that's in one of my favorite genres. That is, of course, turn-based strategy games. We're recording this Mother's Day weekend, so in honor of Mother's Day, I have a Mother's Day fact. This comes from, what's the name of this journal? Neural Regeneration Research. There we go. Neural Regeneration Research. The question is, are there fetal stem cells in the maternal brain? So it's possible that stem cells from the fetus, per the question, can actually travel into the maternal brain. Actually, fetal cells can stay in the mother for up to 27 years. And these stem cells may actually help mothers recover from subsequent traumatic brain injuries. So one of the benefits of pregnancy is your brain heals itself, kind of, maybe, a little bit.
Well, I'm glad there is a benefit, other than the child.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't consider that a benefit. But some people might, sure.
Yeah, some people might, but also, some sort of super strength of some kind, I feel, is a fitting reward.
The side effect of healing your brain is that a child comes out of it.
Yes.
I just do it for the brain recovery, not the child.
I try to have a child at least once a year for the brain recovery. That other voice you hear is, of course, our other host, M. Palladino. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. This is a game that I've only seen on my Steam library and never actually decided to play because I always thought I know what XCOM is like, and my findings are, yes, I knew what XCOM was like.
You were not just completely shook? Your understandings have not changed?
No, I feel like I got it when I played it 6 years ago.
Excellent. Well, before we do that, just a reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can write in. I do not have any emails this week, but you can also support the show, patreon.com/deeplistens, and that will get you access to our community Discord. The Patreon is how we help pay for the hosting of the show and offsetting all of the purchasing costs of all of these games. So if you would like to support the show and help keep this thing running, please do so. And you could be on the Discord report.
The Discord report. This week on the Discord report, you might have seen that we had a late episode go up this past week. It was our Dungeon World podcast that we did about a month ago. It was a bunch of us on the Discord got together and we recorded an intro to Dungeon World, and that might be a thing that comes back. I have some more hours of podcast in the banks.
Yeah,
if you enjoyed it, look out for it.
If you were interested, please write in. Let us know how you felt about the show. It's something we're experimenting with. But the ongoing Dungeon World campaign will likely continue in the Discord. So patrons and hosts of the show all playing in that. So if you would like to join in, now's the time.
Mhm.
Next, of course, it's time for my obsession. And this time, my obsession is Nathan For You. Have you ever seen this show?
Oh, yeah. I'm aware of it. I never really got into it, but sure.
See, I have a complicated relationship with this, but you explain your reasoning.
You have a Okay, so Nathan For You is a Comedy Central show. It has it's been done for a few years now. But the premise of the show is that Nathan Fielder, the host of the show, is a graduate of one of Canada's best business schools, and he graduated with really good grades. And he is going to go to a series of businesses that seem to be based out of California and give them basic suggestions that are just like, if at first blush you heard it, it doesn't sound like the stupidest idea, but all of them are just off kilter enough that they are clearly implausible and will not work properly, but will result in hilarity. So, some examples. There's a pizzeria that does delivery, like most of their business is delivery, so they want to increase their delivery numbers. So he suggests that they do an 8 minutes or less guarantee, or the people get a free pizza. And the person who owns the place says, "We can't make a pizza in 8 minutes. That's impossible." And he says, "Yes, that's true, but you do not say what size of pizza you give away for free. So we give them a very tiny pizza, like an adorable children, like baby size pizza. And that's their free pizza. So you give them a free, very tiny pizza. And then everyone will order from you because you have this crazy guarantee that sounds like an amazing deal." Other examples, there's a Santa, and he suggests having a mall Santa during the summertime with discounted rates, because that way Santas are out of work 11 months out of the year, and by doing this, you can charge discount rates, so people will come and get pictures taken, and it makes the Santas not unemployed the rest of the year. There's a lot of little ones like that. There's one where there's a horse company, like they do horse rides and have stables.
Oh, okay. It's like they make horses? What is a horse company?
It's a stable. It's stable. They let people go on horse rides. And he suggests that there's an untapped market of people who are overweight for horses. Like, horses have a maximum weight they can carry. And so he suggests offsetting heavier guests with helium balloons to offset their weight so that heavyset people can ride horses and tap this untapped market. And it requires an elaborate setup to prevent the balloons from being popped on their normal horse riding track. But this is the kind of stuff. Like, it's always a fairly normal business with a very affable business runner. And he then gives them a suggestion that is just plausible enough to try, but almost certainly will not work. Always a bank shot at fixing their business. And some of them work out splendidly. Some of them do not. Most of them do not. But it tends to be entertaining at the very least. And he has a very deadpan delivery, and all of the people that he interacts with generally are just really genuine folks who want their businesses to do well. And so the interactions between them and this seemingly well-meaning person, I find to be entertaining. As someone who likes bank shot attempts to fix things.
Gotcha.
And what is your complicated relationship with the show?
Everything I've seen about this show makes it seem pretty cringy. I feel like it might be the delivery. It might be everything about it. What do you say on that front?
This show is my obsession because my partner will not watch it with me because she finds it too cringy.
Ah, okay. So there is a basis for this assessment.
There is a basis for this. I will say that it is... His deadpan delivery makes everything awkward. Like, awkward is his genre, pretty much. But I think that many of the attempts at fixing these businesses are absurd enough on their face to be entertaining, just seeing them try to implement this idea in a way that even works. Like, the very first episode, they have a frozen yogurt store. Like, it's a regular one of those frozen yogurt places where you self-serve and everything. And they're like, there's a bunch of frozen yogurt places in town. We do okay, but we could do better. But, how do we differentiate ourselves? And he's like, well, what if you had an absurd flavor that got people to come through the door just to see it? And they're like, okay, like what? And he's like, poop.
I fucking knew it was going to be poop.
I mean, what else could it be?
It's like
really?
Poop flavor. And they're like, that seems bad. Why would anyone eat that? It's like, well, it's not there to eat. It's there so that people come in and go, huh? And then they try it, but then they're in your store, so they'll buy the other frozen yogurts. And he's, okay, I guess we'll do that for a week. And they get some extra traffic from that. So, like, there's that one. There's one where it's like, he suggests that at a clothing store, they let attractive people shoplift one item so that they then wear their clothes and then tell their friends who are hangers-on about this cool place that they got their clothes from. But then there's an implementation problem there because then who's the arbitrator of who is and is not hot? And that's a central conflict in the episode. But there are multiple episodes where he actually managed to create ridiculous situations that either went viral or caused legal problems.
The two ends of the spectrum.
I recommend the dumb Starbucks episode.
Yeah, that was like a whole thing. I remember reading about dumb Starbucks like online. It was a thing for a while.
Yes. So dumb
That
Starbucks.
was one of his?
There was a local barista who like was doing okay, but like not great. He was really struggling. And so he said, what if you just make your make your cafe a parody of Starbucks? Just call it dumb Starbucks. But then everything in the place is just Starbucks stuff. Like, you have the Starbucks branding, but it's called dumb Starbucks. And some people will wander in because they're confused about Starbucks. They think that you're a Starbucks. But then also you can invoke parody law, so you're protected legally. So you just need all of the things on the menu to be just like a dumb latte or a stupid frappuccino, and then you're absolved. That episode's pretty great. But yeah, I would recommend Nathan For You. It's not for everyone, but it is if you enjoy some absurd situations and just businesses trying to do, willing to try different things. The bank shots are always a funny idea. I'm not saying a good idea, a funny idea.
I will watch one episode and I will complain to you when I don't like it.
That's fair. And if you're checking out Nathan For You, I also recommend its companion piece, Review.
I do like Review. That's a good one.
If you like Review, I think you'll like Nathan For You. And vice versa. And Review, also great. They were out at the same time. Review is Andy Daly playing a life reviewer who reviews experiences and then rates them on a scale of 1 to 5.
Okay.
It starts out as a review show where he's just like reviewing different things that get suggested to him by the audience. But as the things there's a continuum. Like, time is continuing. It's not like every episode's a one-off and then we forget about everything that happened before. So his life is getting impacted by the things he's forced to do for the show. And that becomes the show over time, because if someone says, hey, could you review getting addicted to drugs? He has to get addicted to drugs.
Okay.
If he has to review being racist, he has to be real racist.
Is this reality TV?
No,
Is
it's not
this...
It's
reality
like
TV.
fake
Okay.
reality. Yeah,
It's fake
scripted.
reality TV.
Yeah. Okay.
Andy Daly's a comedian.
Yes.
But I would recommend you watch up to Pancakes, Divorce Pancakes.
What?
It's an outstanding episode.
I'll just watch it. Just send me everything.
Review is great. Nathan For You, I think both of these shows are great in different ways. I recommend both of them wholeheartedly. I need to watch all of Review, actually. because that was another one that my partner would not watch with me. We need, in these trying times, sometimes you need shows that you can watch when someone else is doing something else, so that you're not missing out on the continuity. Like Buffy now is a show that we watch together. I need shows that I can watch when, she's working or some other stuff. And so these are my shows. And I tell you, the listeners, check them out. They're good. All right. Without further ado, let's discuss XCOM. M or Pete, do you like to explain what XCOM Enemy Unknown is, or I can do it?
Yeah, Gino, this is your game. You want to take it?
I want to do it.
Okay.
Oh, you want to?
Go.
Do it.
Do it.
XCOM Enemy Unknown is a remake of the classic strategy game UFO Enemy Unknown, also known as XCOM UFO Defense, and is a reboot of the 1990s XCOM series. This is a game where you are playing as an elite team of soldiers tasked with fighting aliens who are just weird little Slender Man and big brain green guys, bunch of different things. This is a tactics game. It's, I think, the most obvious precursor to stuff like Fire Emblem. It is tactical. Combat grid system is in place. Yeah, it's one of those.
Tactics Ogre, Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah, exactly.
Fire
All
Emblem.
of those tactics. Anything that has
Advance
tactics
Wars.
in the name, yeah, this is it. This is the originator. And now it's remade, so all of the cutscenes are really nice. There's combat looks good. It's not like just the isometric view that UFO Enemy Unknown had. Pretty cool.
It's also
if you like tactics.
It's also buggy as hell. We'll
Oh,
discuss that.
Oh yeah.
So XCOM, the reason why I picked this game originally was because I really like the isometric tactics kind of strategy games. And XCOM, while it is difficult, once you learn the systems, I find it to be pretty normal, pretty okay. At least on the normal difficulty. I don't know if you set it up to insane or whatever, if it gets incredibly difficult. But on normal, if you know the rules, you can get through it pretty well. And the character classes, I think, are pretty interesting. Like the different differentiations you get, the abilities you get, and some of the progression that you get over time. Because as you defeat aliens, you will collect their bodies, you will collect their weapons, and you will research them, which will get you better weapons and more skills for your units, which you then procure to upgrade. You can upgrade your base, which will give you access to even more equipment and more units that you can send out. And you're kind of battling the enemies in combat while also trying to juggle global panic. Because every mission that you take, there are also missions you cannot take because they're happening simultaneously. And so whenever you make a choice about where you're sending your units, there can be impacts other places that get more and more panicked as they're getting more and more attacks from aliens that are unresponded to. And if you allow a country or region to be terrorized for too long, they will pull out of XCOM, which will lower your overall amount of money available and kind of precipitate a vicious cycle where you lose money, which causes it to be harder to win battles, which makes you, lose missions, which then increases panic, and so on and so forth. So this is a game mostly about spinning plates on a high level, and then moment to moment, it's kind of an action strategy game. So what rules did you each kind of learn with the combat? Like, what did you take away from your initial battles?
It seemed to me like the snipers were pretty OP. My basic strategy was to send assault units forward, just see things, and then snipers would kill everything.
Yeah.
It's basically what I tried to do.
I learned not to blow stuff up too quickly because then you don't get the resources. If you throw grenades, you will blow up the weapons that your enemies are using, and so you will not get the parts that you need in order to craft stuff. Also, I learned not to spend all your money right off the bat. That messed me up pretty good. Because the only way to get more money is to go on more missions, or you wait until the month rolls over.
Or sell things.
Can you sell things?
Yeah, there's a gray market. It's in.
Yeah, you can sell research items.
I never actually did that.
I didn't do it
that
the first time I
explains.
played this game, and you don't need to, but
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of in the area where you would look at panic levels. There's an
Right.
option called gray market, and you can sell. Some items are just saleable; they don't do anything. And the game tells you like just sell this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some items that you only use them in very specific types of construction, and so they're fair. Like you don't need all of them. You can sell most of them, and it's okay. But it really depends on what sort of structures you need. So that's kind of how you get influxes of money. But there's so many things in the main base menu that I don't blame anyone for not finding every single thing. Like you're spinning so many plates even at face value with the things they tutorialize, let alone the other stuff.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure I saw that and I thought it was like a microtransaction thing. And so I was like, I'm not going to ever use that. And then I didn't click on it.
That's entirely fair for this era.
Yeah. I mean, this is actually a little bit before microtransactions would have really become in vogue. So
This
I
was
don't
at
know why I
around
assumed
that
that.
turning point. This was like the right around Mass Effect 2 into Mass Effect 3. Like Mass Effect 3, I think was the game that was like, oh crap. That and some of the Call of Duties that were coming out around that time were the moment where random loot chests and microtransactions were starting to take off really hard. I think this game came out slightly before, but only slightly.
It was released 2012, so
Okay.
a little bit before.
And this was definitely one of the games that was focused on DLCs, just like tons of little DLCs that you can pick up.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That was their way to monetize us teens.
They got me. I bought all of them because it was a bundle for like
They come for us
$15.
all eventually.
Mm-hmm.
They know.
Yep.
So for me, my rules, I follow the same sort of general strategy as you, Pete. I would send out one assault unit to flush enemies, and then I had 2 snipers who basically did cleanup duty, and then a smattering of other units. I had 1 support, 2 explosives experts. I would have preferred to get 2 supports, 1 explosives person, but just the way the random generator rolled, I ended up with most of those units first. And once you get to a certain point in the game, having units who are not trained and not good becomes difficult to countenance. Like, it's just so easy to roll out your squad of maxed out units that I just didn't train up backups, basically. But I find that the number one rule with XCOM when you're trying it for the first time is to realize that when you make your first motion, you can just move half distance, so you're not sprinting, stop at a place, and then move your other characters too before you commit to Overwatch or sprinting or shooting or doing anything. Like, you can take that first action as long as you're not planning on shooting at something. If you don't know where enemies are, never sprint before you have to. And if you're going to sprint, make sure you have other people in Overwatch to cover for them. So basically just being very intentional. Like, I would leave almost everyone in Overwatch until I had to sprint for a good reason. Like, maybe I didn't have a good place to position someone where they end up in cover without sprinting. And so I would sprint, and that would trigger an enemy. And as soon as you reveal an enemy in the fog of war, they get a free movement to set up behind cover. So if you spring them with like a sprint, like as your last action, they'll get to move into cover and then they'll get to act and attack you. If you end with almost all of your characters in cover overwatched, it's pretty rare that the enemies find you first. And even if they find you first, you'll probably get a good pot shot at them before they can take an action and hurt you. So I found that just playing very conservatively was generally the way to go, because the game doesn't punish you for going slowly.
No, yeah, you can take as long as you want. There aren't like, that's one nice thing about Fire Emblem. that I didn't really notice in this game is like Fire Emblem in a lot of levels has like rolling reinforcements. Whereas like if you take longer, you'll have more enemies to fight. Whereas this one, I mean, it's probably good, I guess. It rewards you for protecting your squad, but there should be some sort of penalty for just chilling.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing with this game is once you realize you're not getting penalized for moving slowly and being extra cautious, I think that the right way to play is to be extra cautious. There are a couple of enemy types where I think they can summon in enemies, or mission types where extra enemies will come in, like the terror missions where you're trying to save as many civilians as possible. If you move too slowly there, a bunch of the civilians will be dead before you can even get to them. Or like there's some missions where you're covering for a VIP, and at a certain point enemies will just spawn in, and that is another one where the longer it takes, the more enemies will spawn. But 9 times out of 10, your normal missions, you just want to be as cautious as possible, because the two things you're being ranked on is how many enemies have you killed and how many of your units were killed or wounded. And if you can leave the mission without any of that happening, even if it takes 100 turns to do it, then you'll get the same rewards as if you spent 10 turns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something I would have to unlearn from like Fire Emblem or stuff like that, where it's like you get ranked on speed if your units die, and like, I don't know, some efficiency. But in this one, you could just, like, I was running through and sprinting everywhere, and I would get fucked up, like, constantly. But I don't know. I still continued to do that, even though it was stupid.
Yeah, that was the hard lesson I learned the first time I played this game. I just kept getting messed up by people when I was sprinting, and then I just realized, like, if I just don't sprint, I won't get jumped by anyone ever. And there were a lot of times where in this game I would spring the enemies by sprinting, and I'd be like, oh crap, that's a really powerful enemy. How the hell am I going to deal with this? Like, towards the middle and later part of the game, some of the enemies can really do a number on you. And because I executed my strategy where my assault was kind of probing, and then I'd have 2 snipers who were always my last 2 units to move because I didn't want to screw up their ability to shoot their sniper rifles unless I absolutely knew I didn't need to shoot them. I often was able to expose an enemy and then use all of my other characters' turns to just destroy it before I even got a chance to shoot at me. So even some of the later game enemies, even when they got the jump on me, I was able to take them out before any of my units really got that messed up. And that's, I think it's an interesting style, but it maybe is not always the most exciting style of play. Efficient but boring. It's like playing with a shield in Dark Souls.
That's
Yes, of course.
awesome.
Shield, Dark Souls, yes.
You know, if you're a coward, that's how you play the game.
Yeah. Or you go completely naked and roll around everywhere.
Yeah.
Like
a hero.
Mm-hmm.
So what, Pete, you said you were all in on snipers. Like, how did you
Yes.
find the balance between the units?
I mean, there's decent, like, reasons to deploy most of them, right? I don't know. Support beyond medics was sort of iffy. But, like, in terms of just sheer killing potential, it did seem like snipers were the outliers. Like, you need other characters, because, like you said, you can't really move snipers. You don't want to send them into the front lines. But especially in a game where you get, like, the way you level up is just if a unit kills somebody, they get promoted, right? Very straightforward, very simple. So to make snipers that much more efficacious, they're going to get promoted that much quicker as well.
Yeah, and I found that the snipers, like, the 2 gigantic things for snipers are squad sight and either in the zone or double tap. Like, their final level. And I had one sniper who was squad sight plus double tap, which squad sight lets you shoot at any unit that you have a line of, like, a clear line to shoot at that another team member can see. So even if your sniper normally would not have a line of sight onto an enemy, as long as someone else does, they can just take a shot at it and it'll use their normal accuracy to hit them. So, like, if you can expose an enemy who's on the completely other side of the map, as long as your sniper has a line of sight, has a direct line to it, they can take it out, and usually they will. And then the two final abilities that they get are either double tap, which just lets them shoot twice, if you want to, in one turn. Usually you can only shoot once in a turn. And the second one is in the zone. So if you kill an enemy who's out of cover or you have flanked, it doesn't count as an action. So you can just keep combo killing, basically. You can shoot one down, shoot another one, shoot another one, shoot another one, and then move after all of that. And then move again if the first thing you did was shoot. So I found that between those two, like having a sniper with each of those, and then I had one sniper who could move and shoot their sniper rifle at an aim penalty, and one who had squad sight. But having those two, they did maybe 80% of the killing for my squad.
Yeah, especially once you realize that you don't get resources if you use rockets. Because, like, rockets are really good, too. They'll blow cars up, they'll kill enemies, but you lose those resources. So they're effectively nerfed.
Yeah. They're really good in terms of damage output. Like, you can deal a normal rocket does 6 damage, especially, and then if you have the explosives experts passive ability where they get double damage to machines, like you can just fire a rocket and deal 12 damage and blow up almost any mechanical enemy in the mid game. And they have like a 90% chance to hit too, so they're really accurate in terms of at least this game's calculus. But that extra resource hit is kind of the way that they balance it. I didn't find it that meaningful. Like, obviously I was missing out on resources, but if something had to die, it had to die. My units were more valuable than the money.
Mm-hmm.
Was how I always weighed it.
There were times when I would be, like, at the end of a mission, and, you know, if my people were pinned down, I'd be like, all right, this once I will throw a grenade and take out, like, 2 guys. And then the mission ends, and you're fine. And maybe you lost some resources, but in the grand scheme of things, I would rather not lose my dudes. So.
No, I was exclusively concerned with war profiteering. Mm-hmm. Resources were my primary concern.
So were you doing a lot of capturing then?
Nah, because that was kind of a pain in the ass too, honestly, because you gotta get so close to them and use the, like, stun gun. I was just sniping, really, for the most part.
Yeah, I would have my assault guy always have an arc thrower on him, and the assaults are pretty good because they get stuff like quick reflexes, which makes the first reaction shot an enemy takes on them always miss. So you can just kind of like run them out, and then they will immediately flush all the enemies. They'll expend all of their Overwatch shots on them, and then you can kind of roll in with everyone else later in the turn. They also get like ability to react to any enemy close to them. Like, they get an automatic Overwatch shot if someone gets too close, which is cool. But you can kind of run them up, and they're pretty hardy in terms of health too. So you can just stun. And the stun has like a 70% hit rate as long as the enemy's 3 HP or less, which is pretty high. And if you stun, you also get the enemy's weapon for free. So if they had a plasma rifle, you just take it. So
I don't think I ever noticed that.
Yeah, I didn't know
That's legit.
that.
Yeah, I built plasma sniper rifles, but all of my plasma rifles just came from stunning people and stealing them. And pistols. Because all of the enemies have plasma weaponry. You can't use them until you research them, but once you do, that's the best way, I think, to at least get pistols. Like, Thin Men are so easy. They have 3 HP base, so you can just stun them immediately and steal their shit. And the supports, I think, were pretty good. Like, their ability to move extra squares is really good. And their ability to revive people.
Yeah, they can heave medkits around, too, which is a nice part. The smoke grenades I could take or leave, honestly, but the medkits are big.
Yeah, I used the smoke grenades. That was another one where, like, oh shit, I overextended this person. They might die unless I make sure these shots miss. Smoke out.
It's very situational.
Yeah, it's nice to have in the repertoire, but it's not amazing. It's really the movement. Like, they're the only unit that can move like an extra 3 squares, so they can cover so much ground. That's awesome. And I found that they're just like balanced, you know? They're good shooters, they can get good assault rifles, and just are real medium. Real medium. So, as the game went on, did you find that you had attrition? Like, did you have people dying?
Yeah, I had a lot of injuries too. I mean, you have to constantly sort of like rotate people in and out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had one mission. It was the one where you have to destroy the reactors, like, inside of the ship. I think it's like the first third of the game. I think it's the first time you see like a mechanical enemy. Yeah. I had like a wipe on that one just because I was not expecting a thing with like 20 health to come out. And I had already like sort of overextended myself and I was weakened. And so then I turned a corner and then this floating thing comes out with like buzzsaws coming off of it.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
That it throws grenades at you like a jerk.
Yeah. Yep. It's not very nice. So I had that wipe, and then I was like, should I save Xcom? And then there's no autosave in this game, also. So I had not been saving at all, and so I restarted. I did it all again. And I guess I learned a lesson because I got past it the second time, but it was also not easy. And then, like, 2 missions later, I go out on, like, a regular mission, and something goes horribly wrong. My person with the med pack dies.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And then I was like, this is unfortunate. So I had some trouble. It was not good. I realized I have to give more than 1 med pack just in case.
Yes. 2 med packs.
Yes. That is the minimum. And then if those die, then you're really messed up. Yeah.
But at least you've got some redundancy. You want a little bit of redundancy on that, I think.
Yes. I would rather have that than, a million frag grenades that I'm not throwing anyway because I want the resources.
I did like bouncing the frag grenades, though. I found that very satisfying for whatever reason.
See, bank shots.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good point. It's a good point.
Yeah, I found that for me, after the first few missions, like 3 or 4, once my units started getting promoted, once you get like 2 or 3 levels up, you can go to the academy and buy a permanent buff that makes your units get plus 25% experience as they, like, from every instance where they get experience for the rest of the game. And I bought that immediately, and that just led to my units getting promoted super quickly. And then that kind of becomes a virtuous cycle where they get better, which makes them better at combat, which makes it more easier. And then you can take on more missions without them getting hurt, which lets you put your A squad in the field more often, and so on and so forth. And then you eventually unlock the ability to cut recovery times in half, which makes it more likely that even if they get severely injured, they'll heal before your next mission. And so you never have to put the B squad out there. And that's kind of what happened. Like, I saved up, I made sure I invested in the things that made my units heal faster and level faster. And then they just rolled into and out of combat so quickly that there was not a big attrition rate. They just became too good.
Did you add on another person in your team, like, early or later? Okay.
Immediately.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I
see.
Anything that made combat safer, I did quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought, like, better armor when I could. I got the healing. I tried to increase my character's will, because will becomes a thing that's very important in the later parts of the game. because if your characters have low will, they can be terrorized by certain enemies, which will cause them to panic and do dumb shit like shoot at your own units or shoot at an enemy they shouldn't shoot at or run out of cover. And having a unit... I had one dude who had very low will, and I don't know why. I think it was because he was wounded badly early on in his career. But his terrible, crappy will just constantly was a problem. I just couldn't let him shoot at mutons at a certain point because they immediately intimidate you if they get hurt. I'm like, well, crap, I guess my Swedish dude here just doesn't get to shoot at one of the most plentiful enemies because he's just going to become terrified.
Well, you look, shell shock was a big problem in World War One. You know, we saw the issues historically.
This isn't World War One. They aliens. They need to die.
This is the far-off future of 2015.
Fuck. Hate that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I found that once I started rolling my strategy out there, it was pretty safe for me to go on most missions. I stopped being constrained by the mission difficulty and started being constrained by the resources and the economy. And that was mainly what was slowing my progress through the game. And Em, I think you wanted to discuss the economy.
Can we talk about the economy really quick?
I've been dying to talk about the economy.
Oh my god.
The economy's bad right now.
It's very bad right now. It is clearly worse in 2015 because for some reason, even though you are an elite alien hunting, multinational paramilitary organization, you still have to pay for everything you do, including like expanding your base, all of the like equipment that you get, you have to pay for, unless you're, I guess, stealing it from your enemies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could
loot.
I didn't know you could even do.
Raid those corpses.
They're not corpses. We're gonna take them back to interrogate them.
We take them alive and then we blow them up later.
I guess, does the Geneva Convention only apply to humans? Like, how specific is that language? I guess member nations? Is that it?
I don't remember, but it does not apply to these filthy aliens. So, Em, you were saying about the economy and its badness?
Let me see what my point was.
Well,
Sorry,
just this. You have to pay for all the things.
You have to pay for all the things. You have to expand your territory. You have to put satellites into space. Like, you have to pay for all of those, and that, you have to have enough things inside your base to run all those satellites. It's just a lot of stuff. It feels like something you might need a guide for, honestly, because I'm sure I was not doing it in a very efficient way.
Yes, almost certainly.
Yeah. I'm sure there is some, the most, you only need this much energy and you only need this many satellites. But, yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, you need you basically need to constantly be spinning plates where you're increasing your power, you're getting more researchers and scientists because those unlock the ability to do high-level research or build high-level items that you'll need for combat. The satellite's main function, on top of occasionally intercepting a UFO and letting you shoot it down, it's mostly there to placate nations that are panicked like crazy. If you shoot a satellite above a nation that's panicked, it will decrease their panic by 2. So I almost never fired a satellite unless a nation was about to leave or was doing really badly. Because that's also a bullet you only get to fire once. Once a nation has a satellite, it has a satellite, and there's nothing you can do to kind of instantaneously bring their panic level down. What were the other big economy drains? I mean, buying the equipment you get a discount the more engineers you have, but you don't easily acquire engineers, and it costs money to just make more engineers.
Yeah, you
So
can
that can be
find them
tough.
in missions.
Yep.
But
It
There's
is like
trade-off there.
it's a weirdly like prescient look at like modern warfare too.
Yes.
Like, I mean, if you think about just like drone warfare, like the issue isn't like well, I mean, there are lots of moral and ethical issues. Setting those aside, the issue isn't like losing soldiers. It's just, all right, how can we build all these drones? You know what I mean? Or like in the age when like fighter jets are like billions and billions of dollars. Like the key constraint is really financial, not, I don't know, personnel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
personnel.
yeah, there's always more people you can hire. Like you can go into a menu and buy some mercenaries, which are actually cheaper than buying med packs. So,
Which,
you know,
Again, like the system of, modern American warfare is
exactly.
outsourcing it to military contractors.
Mhm.
Yeah, recruits are cheap. You can also build automated drones to fight for you, the shivs, and those can be sent out in place of soldiers. I did not do that. I've never gone down the mechanized route, but that is a thing you can totally do. And at a certain point, I think you can also like augment your soldiers with mechanical bits.
Oh,
And I've never-
wonderful.
I've never done that either. But yeah, counterpoint to your point about paying for everything. Currently, the world is undergoing a gigantic financial and disease-based just cataclysm, and the World Health Organization and other groups that are helping fight the disease have to pay for things like masks and medicines. And you'd think, like, hey, we're all fighting this gigantic disease that's hurting every country and people all across the world. Shouldn't this stuff be free? And at the end of the day,
How naive, Gino.
no. No, it's
Uh,
not.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Isn't that weird? So Xcom, it sees the world as it is.
Mm-hmm.
It
And I
sees
hate
the-
it. I don't
Yeah.
like that.
XCOM loves it too. Like, they're
Oh, yeah.
kind of obsessed with this whole idea that like hard choices must be made, certain nations must be sacrificed. Like XCOM loves its gritty realism.
It sure
Mhm.
does. It loves implying that there are choices, but also, if you make the right choices, you never have to make a hard choice.
If you know what the right choices are, then you're fine.
Yeah, it ratchets up the implied stakes a lot, but I found that I actually did lose 2 nations. 2 nations left the council because I screwed
Ooh.
up.
Which ones did you sacrifice, Gino?
It was China and Japan. And it was because I had a choice of going to take a mission in Japan, but I was hard capped on the number of engineers I had. And I needed engineers to like develop something that would progress the story. And I was like, fine. I mean, it sucks that I don't have, and they were like the mission to go there was offering some reward that was terrible. So I was like, okay, I'll go with the engineers one because I need more engineers. I just need them. And I'll figure it out with China and Japan. And then it turned out it was the end of the month, and they went to max terror, and then immediately left.
I love how it's just based on months too, like your rent's
Yeah.
due or something.
Yeah, your rent's due. You had until the 30th to make sure our people weren't getting killed by aliens, and you didn't. So you had to make me feel better, and you didn't. I'm
There
sorry.
have to be repercussions. I'm sorry.
And
We'll
whenever
be
they
with
leave
these
the
aliens
council,
alone, I guess. What do they do? Do they just...
Yeah, once
it's fucked up. So that whole area, whatever country it was on the map, it's just covered in like alien energy, and it seems like it's been lost to the world.
Oh.
Yeah, you don't want them to leave. It's bad.
I mean,
Well-
it seems like they shouldn't want to leave.
no, what's their rationale for leaving? Like, are things
Yeah.
going to be better outside the council?
Look, I'm not here to tell. Yet again, let's go to the current situation. What's the good rationale for not using the World Health Organization and other scientifically backed tests and procedures and recommendations? What's the good reason to do that? Did people think that it'll be better if they walk away? I don't understand, but people do it.
This is a little too close to home, I think.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't get it, but people do. And in XCOM, maybe there's a prescient lesson here, but when you abandon the solidarity and consensus, when you abandon the fraternity of humanity, you get consumed by aliens.
You abandoned Japan first,
I was going to shoot a satellite. The satellite was in production. If they waited 2 more days, they would have been pacified. It's fine. Though it does get easier to keep in the other countries when some countries are gone. The money that they took with them was not necessarily as big of a deal as just not having to deal with 2 extra countries worth of problems. So overall, like, what did you think of the difficulty level? Like, did you find that it was off-putting? Did you find that it increased or decreased your enjoyment of the game?
I generally liked it. I mean, I found the stuff outside of combat compelling. It seemed like there was just a lot.
It was too much for me.
Yeah, like maybe for somebody else, like that's what they're looking for. But for me, I was like, I got to manage all this stuff. Like, I just want to build a cool squad,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is very much like based on like the source material. It was like you had this global strategic element, and then you had the battlescape is what it was called. And so it was very much designed to be like manage everything. And then this one goes a step even beyond that and adds on like your base and even more stuff. So like I don't think there was intercepting UFOs, but I think it was like a little less like I think it was just like you push a button. You didn't have to actually think about it. So this one just went like, what if we had even more micromanagey bits when all you really want to do is kind of shoot aliens?
Yeah. I found the combat missions to be the most compelling part. The base management stuff was largely spinning plates for me, and I had to do it, otherwise the game would spiral out of control, but I didn't necessarily enjoy it. So one thing that I thought was interesting with the story is how much the game kind of shows your characters and humanity kind of getting in touch with alien technology and getting their hands on it and incorporating it into their own weaponry and into your soldiers, and how it fundamentally changes your soldiers over time. When you're initially starting out fighting the aliens, you're using assault rifles, relatively recognizable military equipment. And then as you progress, you jump from guns shooting bullets and normal like camo military gear to, some slightly fancier armor. It looks like it's incorporating some metals instead of just like flak jackets. You have these kind of fancy laser weapons, but they look plausible. Like they look near future. They look a little jerry-rigged. They're not super efficient necessarily. But then once you start getting to plasma weaponry and also kind of like the Titan armor and the Ghost armor, the ones that make you go invisible, the Titan armor just looks like Muton armor that you're fighting against, but humans can wear them. You can get jetpack armor that looks like it's got the what are the flying dudes' names? Flying aliens.
Names. Yeah, you know the ones.
Yeah, the ones that fly. Those ones.
The ones with the jetpacks. They just have the jetpack
poison
guy.
For Cusco. Cusco's poison.
Yeah.
Yes. You fly with. You get the same jetpacks, right?
Floaters.
Floaters, yeah. You get the ability to float like a floater, sting like a bee. and your characters just become indistinguishable. Like, you're using the guns that you stole off of the aliens when you drag them back to your base. And it just becomes, the line starts to blur very visually, and also in terms of skills. Like, you start getting the ability to have psionics, so your units can become psychic and start using the psychic attacks that some of the other aliens use on your units. And you can start turning them around. So it's interesting to watch as the humanity is drained from your units, and they become more efficient killers over time.
Yeah. Did you use a lot of those towards the end of the game?
Not psi abilities, but I did use all those fancy armors. Like, gaining the ability to grapple is super important for your snipers, because you can just put them on high cover, and then if you've got the passive that gives you, like, huge bonuses for being in cover, those are very, very useful with those grappling hooks, and being able to go invisible is also super powerful, makes them very hard to hit.
Yeah.
And the Titan armor just, like, gives you so much health that all of a sudden you can take some of those heavy, like, if you got surprised by a hollow disc, you would probably survive it if you have a Titan armor. Pete,
It's a pretty, I was say it's a pretty common story about military tech, right? Like, once you introduce something, it's out there, and like, it's pretty much, you can't roll back the dice. Like, this is like a big recent problem with cyber warfare. Like, the thing about like shooting a rocket is, you shoot the rocket explodes, like, it's gone. You send a virus out in the world, like, okay, now your target has this virus. They can reverse engineer it, they can use it themselves. So here you see sort of that same story played out with armor and psionic abilities. But it's like a fairly, like, historically relevant military fact, you know?
Yeah, and I just found that it was pretty interesting because the game early on, your two kind of voices in your ear, the doctor and the engineer, there's kind of these two competing voices. The doctor's like, we need to study these aliens because their tech is going to advance our tech, and we need to do whatever we can to defeat these aliens because they're going to kill everyone. And then there's the engineer who's like, but what if we use the enemy's skills, aren't we becoming them?
Ooh, deep.
I can't even discern the difference between our people and theirs. I think that there will be consequences for this for years to come. And at a certain point, you know, that guy's delivery was never convincing to me. But when I rolled my unit out and I saw, oh crap, that's muton armor, a muton gun, and the dude in there, I used to be able to see a human in there, but not no more. Then I started thinking about, or if you're like rolling out drones, like the advanced drones, they also look more and more alien. The ships that you start sending out stop looking like planes and start looking like alien ships. You can also develop alien infrastructure in your base, and then your base starts looking like the motherships inside.
I mean, we might as well get to a
slippery
little
slope.
plot here too. Like, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the uplift.
Do we want to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, all right. So
Spoilers for the end.
this game's throwing out a whole bunch of like sci-fi tropes all at once. So the whole theory is that the aliens had a secret base at like the center of the Earth or something. I don't even remember where it was. Do you remember? Is it the center of the Earth?
It's on Earth.
Yeah, it's somewhere. So the aliens have a secret base on Earth, and their whole thing is they're going around the galaxy looking for advanced life forms to uplift, right? To sort of push them along into their next phase of evolution. And it just happens to be humans' turns. And for whatever reason, we're the one species in the universe that this was going to work for. It's like, I mean, that's the whole idea, right? Like, you're adopting these alien technology to advance your civilization through warfare. I guess it's like a Darwinian thing.
Somehow you have to prove that you are worthy of these advancements. And so what we're going to do is unleash our army on you, and if you beat them enough times, you will get our shit. Seems to be the message.
Yep. Pretty much. And you take the fight to them and you show them that humanity will not be toyed with in this way. We're too good.
Of course we are. Like, we're the best. Go humans.
Unless you play XCOM 2.
Mm-hmm.
XCOM 2 presupposes that we lost.
Nice. Good
Is that what
twist.
happens?
Yep.
I haven't played it.
Yeah, that is the cool thing about XCOM 2, is that they're like, yeah, you fucked up in XCOM 1. We decided.
The idea, though, of, like, the secret alien base, like, on Earth, like, H.G. Wells did that with War of the Worlds, like, back in the 30s. Like, it's not a twist anymore. Same with the idea of, like, aliens basically testing humans to, like, see if they're ready. Like, this was in The Day the Earth Stood Still. Same idea, right? Aliens come in and are like, look, we're going to kill all of you unless you shape up. Like, the idea that, like, the higher power coming in to sort of, like, direct traffic. Not exactly new.
Yeah, the extraterrestrial referee. Kind of played out. Agreed.
Do we see it in games very often?
Let me throw my mind back through time.
Secret bases, probably. I mean, that's...
Yeah. Thinking
that's
aliens
not
specifically.
Yeah, I'm trying to think now.
Nier Automata does some of this.
Yeah.
Let's never speak of that again.
Sorry.
We don't
What did
like
I say?
that one.
I blacked out there for a second.
Nothing. Do we think Mass Effect was working with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Mass Effect. Though Mass Effect, they do the same thing where humanity discovers some ancient tech and it leaps us forward a bunch of, years into the future in terms of tech. However, we're also inhibited because we follow the rails that are already there.
I'm sure if we pulled enough of the proper nouns from Halo, eventually this would come up.
Anything with ancient aliens, really. It always comes down to this. I'm sure that Assassin's Creed has some of this in it.
Ancient aliens.
There's a little bit of Chrono Trigger in terms of, like, the enemy's been here all along, but that's not a perfect parallel.
I can see it.
We're not using their ancient tech, though we do use the ancient tech from Shala's time, from the Ice Age time.
What, like clubs?
No, the Ice Age time is the time when there's an ancient civilization that is drawing on the power of Lavos.
I don't remember that at all. There was too much in Chrono Trigger. I can't remember all of it.
How dare you?
I'll play Chrono Trigger again.
We played it for the show. It won an award.
Yeah.
It did. We want to just do it again.
Yeah, let's do it again.
Let's play Chrono Cross.
Should we do
Fucked up.
the first Golden Sun game now?
Oh man.
Never. Well, that is all I have to say on XCOM.
Yeah, I think we covered it.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it really, though, weirdly, it's more about the economics of war than, like, actual real-time tactical combat, if you ask me, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the more difficult part is managing the base and managing all of the panic levels than it is the combat. And that was actually what kind of caused me to drift away from the game towards the end game, was just I knew that I could win all of the battles. I knew that every battle would just play out very similarly because I knew what my characters were good at and how I needed to play them. And I was not going to necessarily be challenged moment to moment, but the combat would take me like 40 minutes. Like, it wasn't like it would be fast just because I knew what I was doing. But I was going to be stuck in a holding pattern because I had to get all of the money and I had to wait for all of my units to be developed because they take time to get built. And I was just going to be stuck doing like 8 or so combat missions before I could actually progress the story, just because of the way that the loop works in this game. And the gameplay loop just at a certain point wasn't as interesting to me as it was when there was still progression for my characters. Once I maxed my characters out, just getting the chance to run myself into another combat situation was not that appealing. So, with XCOM in the can, I think it is time now for Pete to pick.
It is? Oh, we're back around to me? Okay. I'm going to switch genres, styles, ideas pretty much completely here. So I'm going to switch to a game that has almost universal acclaim on Steam, which isn't always good for us. But it seems interesting. It's story-driven, which we haven't Have we done a story-heavy game recently?
We've done Hollow Knight is not.
Yeah, Hollow Knight isn't.
West of Loathing, not
Kinda.
really. Touched by Day of the Tentacle, kinda.
Regardless, I'm going to pick What Remains of Edith Finch.
Ooh.
So
classic.
2017 game. It's sort of story-driven. You're trying to find out about this family's history and the titular Edith Finch. Like I said, almost universal acclaim on Steam. Just looking at the numbers right now, 10 out of 10 on 14,000 reviews. So let's be the 14,260th people who hate it, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just checking. Okay, I do not own this already. Excellent. Let's play What Remains of Edith Finch. Ugh. Why was that hard to say?
I don't know. I kept saying What Happened to Edith Finch, which I think is a better title personally, but we'll see. It's not my decision.
Or Jerry Seinfeld's What's the Deal with Edith Finch?
I think a little shift in tone, but I like it.
All right. Well, thank you, M.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, gentlemen.
Thank you, Pete.
Yep, good time, interesting game. Probably one I won't revisit, though, honestly.
I revisited it. It was fun the second time, but at a certain point it felt like chores, and that's when I stopped playing. And thank you, listeners. Reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can also support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. Next time we'll be playing What Remains of Edith Finch. Till next time, peace!